Yeah, what up, yo? This is Branch Dean of Avenue Cool Music, trusting that all is well with you and yours. Hey, look, this is going to be a brief session. This is session 3 of the series, The Beginning Bassist. There's a few things that I want to touch on that I don't think I made clear enough or added enough information in series 2, where I talked about bass guitar strings. I know that I mentioned that the bass guitar strings come in uh, different gauges, and I indicated that they come in light, medium, and heavy. So that still stands as the same, but there's a difference in the types of strings that are available to you. Two of the most common types of strings are round wound and flat wound. Um, the majority of basses that you're going to see are fretted basses, and they're going to have round wound strings on them. Now, there's also what is known as flat wound strings as well. The difference is in the design of the strings, whereas a round wound string begins with a single string, a nickel or steel core string that is then wrapped or wound, that has another steel string wrapped around it. It's called a round wound string. That's most often used on a fretted bass guitar. And then you have the flat wound strings, where you have the core string. Maybe it's probably hexagonal. It's a hexagonal string that has a ribbon type string wrapped around it, a ribbon type steel string wrapped around it. It's going to have either a steel core or a nickel core with a ribbon type steel string wrapped around it. That's the primary difference in the construction of the flat wound string and the round wound string. Flat wound, round wound strings are going to be brighter, but like you're going to hear that a lot in funk music, R&B, slap style bass lines. They're going to be using round strings, and your mellower sounds are going to be um, quite often it's going to be a flat wound string. Some guys do use flat wound strings on a fretted bass guitar, but the majority of the time someone uses a flat wound string is going to be used on a fretless bass guitar, sort of like this fretless bass right here. You see, there's no frets on this bass. This bass has a flat wound strings on it. So yeah, when you buy guitars, when you buy bass guitar strings, and the salesperson asks you whether you're looking for flat wounds or round wounds, they may ask you that. You want round wounds if you're playing a fretted bass guitar, and you want flat wounds if you're playing a fretless bass guitar. Now, another thing I want to mention is I may have been a bit harsh when I was talking about the difference between the different watts on the combo amp that you might want to start with. The reason that I recommend starting with the combo amp is because the combo amp is easier for the bassist to grab and go. You know, you have your gig bag lined up with everything that you want in it. Then if you got to go to a gig, you're going to hang out with your partners and your friends and jam a little while, just grab your gig bag and grab your combo amp, and you're on the way. As opposed to having a gig bag and then your amp has a cabinet and an amp head. You know, that's additional. That's two additional items that you got to grab along with your bass guitar, as opposed to just grabbing your combo amp, putting it in the back of the car or in the back seat of your car and driving. That's why I recommended beginning with a combo amp. But you make the decision. Some guys like to go all out, but you make the decision in terms of what you want to do in terms of choosing an amplifier. Now, like I said, I might have been a bit harsh when I was talking about the 15-watt amps. 15-watt amps make really nice practice amps. You know, I mean, like I have 3 of them, and I was looking at some videos today, and while I was on the CD promo tour, I was using 15-watt amps. You know, the Fender 15-watt amps, and then what happened is I bought this 40-watt amp, and when I got the 40-watt amp, gave me that much more power over the 15-watt amps. I kind of got, I guess I got kind of the big head here. I got to have a 40-watt. So, but yeah, 15-watt amps should be sufficient as a practice amp. 15, 20-watt, they should be sufficient as a practice amp. So if you get the opportunity to get a good deal on a 15 or 20-watt amp, go for it. But, eventually you're going to need to upgrade as you progress as a bassist. You're going to want to upgrade to 40, 60, whatever, and maybe even beyond. Like I have a 400-watt amp that I was taking on the CD promo tour, and they said, "Hey, look, you got to turn that down, dude," because I was playing in these malls and whatnot. So Now I have my I take two 15-watt amps, or when I go out. I hook one up to the microphone because I do sing. I hook the other amp, 15-watt amp, to my laptop because I play backing tracks when I'm playing bass. And then now I have the 40-watt amp, which I connect my bass to when I go out on my CD promo tour. And so there's one more thing I want to show you about these amplifiers that I want to clarify for you. Now, this is my 40-watt Eden bass amplification. I'm kind of switching over to Eden because I love the sound of this bass amp. But I was talking about the control knobs here. I'm not going to talk about the input because that's active and passive. You know, active is pretty much playing slap style bass. Passive is, the active gives you more power for playing slap style bass. That's the difference between active and passive. If you should happen to get a bass amplifier that has active and passive on it, these effects over here, if you want to hook in some headsets, and if you want to run some other music like a tape player or whatever, your MP3 through it, you can connect it to do that. So, but I want to talk about, we talked about you have a bass, you have a mid, and you have a treble on your control, but you also have a volume knob here as well. But some bass amplifiers are going to have a gain. I want to talk about the difference between the gain knob and the volume knob. The volume is self-explanatory. You turn it up to increase the volume. But the gain, that's how you control the input from your bass guitar to the amplifier. It allows you to determine how much input you're going to be putting into the amplifier. And so the important thing about gain, when you have a gain knob and a volume knob, remember that the gain is not a volume knob. It's an input knob. The gain should never be at a volume, at a notch rather, higher than the volume. Never. I have a rule of thumb where I never set the gain more than 10 degrees to the volume. For instance, if I have the volume at 12 o'clock, if you're looking at the face of a clock, if I have the volume at 12 o'clock, the gain is going to be at 11:50, 11:45 to 11:50, maybe 11:55, depending on the venue or the sound that you're looking for. But the gain is never going to be equal to or greater than the volume. That's just my rule of thumb. I don't know what else some other guys may use the gain and the volume, but that's how I use it. So if you purchase an amplifier with gain and volume on it, keep that in mind. Gain is input, volume is self-explanatory, is output. Okay, so that's session 3 of the beginning bassist. The next session, we should be able to jump right into talking about the bass guitar. Today is Wednesday, so Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Hopefully I'll have that video ready for you by Saturday. And hopefully I'll be able to talk about everything in one video. So until next time, peace.